G'day people, and welcome back to part 3 of this little instructional series with the Mitsubishi Magna wave spring repair or replacement. Part 3 is I'm going to put this back together. Okay, I have off screen, I have a set of the pages out of the manual to help me along with that. But follow the instruction manual, and if you follow the way that it comes apart, you should be able to follow the way it goes back together again. So let's get started. First of all, before we put it back together, you would have got hold of an actual new wave ring. Okay, so if you're looking for the parts, you need to call up an automatic parts supplier that specialises in parts like transmission parts and so on. So I use Google to find that information. New wave ring is about 3mm thick, and it's a solid ring. It doesn't come apart like that there, like this broken wave spring does. Remember, the wave spring, when it's complete, one of these ones goes around almost 2 laps, and it pulls up just short about where my thumb is there. So there's a bit of a gap between the two ends. Okay, so you want to replace that with a wave ring, which is a solid ring. Made out of a solid piece of steel, so it won't break like these ones do. I'm going to place that in there. I'm using that one because I don't have a wave ring at the moment, and this is just a gearbox to show you what's going on there. So from there, once we put that wave ring back into place, the wave ring will seat down inside the groove, down inside of the edges there, and we start putting it back together. So first of all is this little pressure plate here. So this one here, if we look at the camera there, you can see that there's damage on there from the wave ring moving and breaking and so on, and that basically isn't going to change the operation of the vehicle, so that's not so bad. The other side there, on this side, it's got no damage at all, and that's the side where the clutch friction plates are. Now if there's a lot of damage on that side there, you most likely would have to get something done about that, and most likely would have to replace that part. Okay, these things pretty much only go in one way, and so we're going to start putting that back together. So these locating grooves fit in a certain way in the gearbox, and basically that's what controls how it goes together. So we drop that plate into there, no worries. From there we fit in the rest of the brakes and the rest of the plates. Now these you should have soaking in automatic transmission fluid as well, to make sure that they don't want to dry. If you're putting a whole new set in, they need to be soaked in automatic transmission fluid first. So we get that plate goes in, and they should be very, very clean. Get rid of all your dust and everything like that. So that plate goes in, and then we put in the next little metal plate there. Next brake plate goes in, and so on. We keep on putting those in. So I'll get those done. So yep, I do put them in one at a time. Find it works a little bit easy like that. Plate, ring, plate, ring. So I had one of these that was the wave ring damaged one of these brake plates quite an amount. There was not much material left on there, and I put that in anyway, and I did 40,000 kilometers in that with that gearbox before that had an issue. Where I had the issue was the car got run up the backside, so it got written off. Actually, I had that same gearbox in 2 cars. There we go. You often you can buy these cars pretty cheaply because of this particular issue. The gearbox has stopped working, and people don't want to fix it, or can't afford to, or just think they've had enough and get another car. So I'm lining up these tabs, you might call them, because we need to make sure that we need to put parts back down there. The rest of the gears in there, they need to go down in there, so I need to line that up. Okay, so I've got those brake plates in. There is a snap ring that goes in there. Okay, so after that last snap ring's gone in there, we put in the last of that set of brake plates. So there is, in total there's 1, 2, 3, 6 of those plates there, and now the reaction plate goes in. That reaction plate is a rather thick plate. It is stepped. It's got a few differences to the other plates. It's got that little tab right there, which fits into the groove here. So there's only one way that can go in. I've tried to put it in back to front and forwards to back, and there's only one way it goes in, and that's that way around there. Okay, so that drops into place there. From there we have another snap ring goes in. Okay, so from here, after the reaction plate goes in, we put the second of the two smaller snap rings in. So pop that one in, click into place, that's nice. No worries. Now with a new wave ring in place, that may need a bit more persuading into place. You need to push that reaction plate down because the new correct wave ring will give you a bit of resistance there. And if it doesn't go in at all, well, you've probably got it put together the wrong way, or the wave ring is not seated correctly in its groove there. Okay, so we've got that back together there so far. So at this stage, the manual says to, when you're pulling it apart, when you got this far, the planetary gears what would have come out just last. That's what we're going to put back in right now as well. So the planetary gear, it's called a planetary gear because it's got 3 little gears around there. So it's like the planets, and they go around the main gear there. So to put this together, there are one set of splines here, set of splines there, and a set of splines here that go on the clutches as well. So it's a little bit of a trick to put that all back together. That's why we need to have these lined up, in the clutches lined up. It's a little bit heavy, so we need to be careful what we're doing there. Line that up in the splines there. And we need to try and, it's a little bit of a juggle up and down. You'll know when you get it, because she does just pretty much drop into place when it gets right. Doesn't want to play today. There we go. There we go. So it's going down, but it's fouling with the teeth on the clutch plates. I don't feel it's gone all the way down, so it's going to pull it back up. The clutch plates moved slightly, the top one's moved. It's not quite right. Let's have another go. Okay, I feel that I've got all of those now. Now, if I'm going to look down through the side here, you won't be able to see it on camera, but you can basically see if all those clutches are moving. Let's grab my torch. Okay, so after about 4 attempts, I've got this down into place. So if you can see, looking down in here a little bit, there's the reaction plate, and the top edge of the fingers that go into the clutch plates is down probably at the bottom of that reaction plate. The other way to figure it out is if we look down in the gap that's down through here, you can't see from where you are, and we turn that around, we can actually see all of those clutch plates turning with that. So that must be housed in home. Completely. So that's great, that's into place. So from here, we then put in a set of plates. So we've got the brake plates go into place. Once again, you need to line all those up, otherwise it will give you problems. So plate, brake plate, and plate. Pressure plate. Yeah, I'm going to try and line all those up as we go. Line those teeth up, it's going to make life a lot easier for us later on. Righto. Pressure plate, so brake plate, pressure plate, best if these all go back in together the same way they came out. Brake plate. So I run out of brake plates, that's all of them. I'm going to make sure that's all lined up there. And what does the manual say to do next? It says to put that final pressure plate in. Now that pressure plate can be a little bit tricky. It does have a step there. So it's a matter of it's got to go back in the right way, otherwise it's not going to work properly. So this is where you need to make sure you've checked it when you're pulling it apart as to which way it all goes back together again. Okay, so I'm looking at that. I'm looking for wear. Okay, I can see that this side here, going by the wear, has been sitting on the brake plate. So the step is facing upwards. Okay. So what have we got next to do? We have the return spring to go in. Looks a bit like a wave spring in the way it's made, but it's called a return spring. Goes into place. We've now got to put in the what's called the second brake piston. So that's it there. So it consists of a metal part and an aluminium part, and it can only go one way in because it has that tab there. So that tab fits into the slot down in here. Okay, now the trickiest part about that is it's got it's been cut off a sheet of metal and pressed into place. It's not been, so it's got a sharp edge there. The problem with that is down inside of here there is a rubber O-ring type arrangement in there, and that feeds transmission fluid into this hole here. Okay, and so that pressure in there pushes that piston out. So the problem is, if we try to push that in right away, what it's going to do is just going to tear up this rubber seal inside of here, and then it's not going to work properly. So the solution I found with that, and I'm sure an automatic transmission specialist might do something that's different, is that what I've got there is a piece of it's a feeler gauge, but it's a very, very thin piece of feeler gauge. So what I've done in there is I drop that into there, and then I try to place this in with that. Now it is a tight fit, so going on at an angle will give you a problem. So it's a little bit of a trick. So let's see how I go. I'm going to just try placing that down past that return spring and putting it in that way. I might just hold that feeler gauge up a bit. Okay, so I'll have that in place, and I just need to get that feeler gauge to the side there and gently pull that out. I had soaked that with transmission fluid first, because if you use a really thick one and don't do that, you've got to tear that rubber seal again. So I got that in. So the next step is to put in the last snap ring. I'm getting close. Getting close. The glove's caught. We're having a win. Okay, so that this side's already started going in by itself. There you go. So that's that spring back into play. Okay, so the manual says now I've got to put the Planetary reverse sun gear back in. So that gear there fits in with these planets here, and this is the big sun that I all go around in here. Okay, so I need to place that into play in there. So you can see that those there grooves got to match up with your clutch plates that are there as well. So let's see how we go with that. Let's check so I missed anything. No, that's all good. Okay, and I believe that is in place. So I'm just going to check, make sure I've got them all engaged again. Okay, by using the torch down the side here, I can see that all those clutches are indeed going around. So therefore I've got them all engaged. Okay, so once I've got the reverse planetary sun gear in, we put in thrust bearing, and then we have the overdrive clutch hub to put into place as well. And that goes into there like that. Okay, so once we have the clutch overdrive hub into place and we have the thrust bearing into place there for that as well, we need to then put in the final piece, which is this one here. So the tricky part here is we have some clutches in here, those teeth all need to line up. We have some clutches in here, and those teeth all need to line up as well. This is probably one of the trickier parts to put back together, and you'll know if you got it right in the end if the whole cover goes back on right. So let's try and see how we go. Okay, so it's got the spline to line up, got my fingers caught, got the spline to line up, and those clutch plates to line up as well. Could I be that lucky and get it in first go? I can tell you, most times I'll do this, it is not first go. Okay, so once we've got that gear into place, we then need to put the cover back on. There's a couple of things we need to be aware of. One, we need to have our O-rings back into place. They need to be seated correctly. If they're not, we will cause damage to them. I have caused damage to one of those, and it would need replacing if I use this transmission again. We need to, around this face here that I'm wiping, we need to wipe that very cleanly, and we need to remove any trace of oil, dust, anything from there. So what I've done in the past, I've got some thinners, or I've got some silicone and wax remover, and I've removed all the grease from there. The manual says using a form in place gasket, so I've used that on my transmission that I'm running at the moment. Okay, it says to run a 3mm wide bead all around the outer surface there and around each bolt hole. 3mm diameter bead only. Any larger than that, we're going to be squeezing a whole heap of sealant into the inside of the transmission, and we don't want that either, and we don't want it to leak. So nice even 3mm wide bead all the way around and around all the bolt holes. Okay, now we get to find out if I've got this hub here in correctly. Hopefully my thrust bearing here stays into place, and I'm going to carefully put that on. Okay, and that's seated down beautifully. Okay, first time I've had that. Usually I've had it where it's sitting up a bit, and if it is sitting up a bit, it means that that last set of clutch plates aren't in correctly, so that last gear is not in place. So if it's sitting up a bit, you need to pull it apart and get that seated properly. Last one of the times I did that about 3 or 4 times before I got it right. So there we go, it's back together. It just needs bolting together, and that's it for the F4A51 wave spring replacement and repair. Okay, so it is a rather tricky little job to do. There's a lot of little things that could go wrong, can go wrong. I've done a couple of these now and they're running fine. I'd say one of them, the car got run up the backside. That transmission had been in 2 cars after I'd done its repair. The car I'm running at the moment, I did the same repair on it and not a problem. Parts wise, the wave spring and the filter that I put into place cost me $80 including freight.